Hello everyone, my name is Chris, and I've been playing D&D since I was 12 and been a dungeon master since I was 15. It has been quite a while, hasn't it? I've been rolling virtual clickety-clacks for quite a bit, but kept somewhat silent, I guess. Life has been moderately unfair to say the least. Today's video was proposed by a friend, actually, one of my Adventurers League players before the pandemic hit. Rob proposed I go over the different Warlock Pacts for the Warlock class. Now, I plan to do a video on every class in the near future, so as far as rules goes, I will save that for the video that I've planned for that. For this video, I plan to go over some of the basic fundamentals of the different packs, what their patrons can be like, or possibly want with some mortal who wants to cheat and get magic by asking, and how you might develop a backstory and roleplay being bound by different packs. Basically, this is a roleplay video that can help you with character development and creation and will not focus on the numbers. I'll also state that in my years playing D&D, I never came across the Warlock Pact until I started playing 5th edition, and I jumped on it immediately because the Pact of the Great Old One, and it was my first class in 5e. I started D&D in 2002 with 3rd edition, and developed steadily a group of friends in 3.5. Moving from there, in high school, when 4th edition dropped, I read a bit of it and chose to stay in 3.5, feeling 4th edition was hot garbage. If you liked 4th edition, I have no judgment against you, I simply prefer 3.5. In 3.5, the only mention of the Warlock class was in the Complete Arcane class, and not many people had that book, let alone all of the 3.5 supplements, which there are a total of 66 or so books in 3.5. With that said, the Warlock wasn't a core class back then, or known too well among regular players. So the Warlock wasn't a big deal until 5th edition really, and they are pretty much loved by everyone. In 5e, a Warlock is a person who didn't pop out of the womb with balls of fire from his eyes and bolts of lightning from his ass, and they took a look at Spellbook and accepted that reading is for nerds, so they did the easier cheapskate route and understood that it's easier to apologize than to ask permission and bargained with some powerful supernatural being to achieve magic of their own. Without jumping into the mechanics of the Warlock, I'll just say that cantrips are the big focus of Warlocks in terms of magic. They get limited spell slots, but they regain their spell slots on a short rest, making them more likely to gain more from a day's worth of activity than, say, a wizard or a sorcerer, but they have less magic to use than those classes. So a lot of their abilities and invocations are cantrip focused. So where does a Warlock get their magic? They get their magic from a bargain they struck with whatever being they happen to have broken or deal with. These are listed as pacts. First on the list is Pact of the Archfey. An Archfey is an incredibly powerful Fey leader. They are nigh on par with gods, but are a few rungs down on the ladder. Fey in and of themselves in D&D are very tricky and mischievous, so it stands to reason that the bargain of their pact would boil down to something just as tricky and mischievous. It could be something simplistic like gathering a gem a day and offering it in a lake, to something more abstract like a shard of happiness on a certain holiday, or any of the myriad of things in between. When it comes to pacts as a whole, they have to somehow benefit in some recognizable way from your efforts. So it would stand to reason that whatever the Archfey in question wants you to do in exchange for your flashy powers would be beneficial to it as well. Now, as a whole, when dealing with the Fey, it's always a best practice to develop a sense of humor. Because if they do something they see as funny, be it throwing a pie in your face or setting your shoes on fire, they see it as a joke or a prank. And you better laugh along or you're going nowhere with them. A fun path to go down is for you to collect X amount of individual gems and several arcane diagrams to present to your Archfey patron at the end of every month, so that said patron can fill out a board game like Monopoly or chess, so it can beat you in a game of whatever it may be, even something made up on the fly. That idea is both time consuming, as not many gems will do, and it also gives you a sort of side quest that you can work out with your DM to go along and find these arcane marks and gems. It's frivolous, abstract, and benefits the Archfey in a way you as a non-fairy would not be able to understand, and honestly, it's best not to try. Just laugh, see how it's funny, and save your criticism for when you are no longer within earshot. Next up is the Pact of the Fiend. To simplify things a bit, fiends are entities from the lower planes, like the Nine Hells or the Abyss. Places where evil is at its thickest, and corruption is a state of affairs, like in any evil world in Fable 2 after you do the money glitch and some random dude pays $3,000 for rent in a one-bedroom house. Not ashamed of it, got me some cash. Pacts with fiends are usually pretty straightforward. I give you powers, you give me your soul, or something equal to the powers you gain from it. This is usually why some warlocks often are at odds with some more holy characters like paladins, because they gave up their soul while paladins are trying to save it. That being said, unless you are part of some prophecy or you are already a powerful individual, like a politician or a knight, the Fiend won't really care what you do after the deal is signed. Sometimes a Fiend will strike a deal with you to perform some task that your character might see as doable, simply because they have misplaced hope. But the Fiend knows that you think you can do it, and it is often just out of reach, or is far more complicated than you might think. So while your task isn't impossible, it's going to be very convoluted. In the end, the deal you make will benefit the Fiend far more than it benefits you. But hey, Eldritch Blast, am I right? Next on this list is my personal favorite, Pact of the Great Old One. For those of you that are uncertain, Great Old Ones are initially a Lovecraftian thing, Great Old Ones being some ancient evil or entity that far predates humanity, maybe even the universe. The mindset of these entities is light years beyond the comprehension of humanity, and more often than not, these beings either don't care about the well-being of us pitiful humans, or they simply don't know that we're there. They could literally be as big as planets, and they often are, and they are ambivalent of our existence. In 5e, Great Old Ones encompass a vast majority of the Great Old Ones mentioned in the works of H.P. Lovecraft, like Cthulhu, Azathoth, Nyarlathotep, which, if you are a fan of H.P. Lovecraft like I am, you see these and you immediately don your robes, pull out your wavy dagger, and start praising the Great Dreamer in pure glee. However, unlike in 3rd edition where I began, there is a primary setting in 5th edition, that being in the Forgotten Realms. And they have their own set of Great Old Ones like Tharizdun, which was a god in Greyhawk, and Dendar the Night Serpent. Being a Lovecraft fanboy, I like to think I can give some pointers here. As for what a Great Old One wants, it can usually boil down to them wanting to be released from some ancient prison of some sort, much like Hastur wanting to be released from his prison, which is quite literally a freaking star. He is imprisoned on a star. Yog-Sothoth is sort of locked away in a void between realities like a fold in space and time. On some occasions, a Great Old One will want something that makes absolutely no sense, like a certain herbal mixture from plants that are extinct, and use that herbal mixture to paint its symbol all over a wall in some sort of way, or for a certain years-long chant to be sung. It makes no sense, but who are we to question the thought process of ancient intelligences? In many occasions, the Great Old One may not even be aware of your existence. You've gotten a sliver of power from reading a sort of ancient tome about them and being driven to insanity, or having glimpsed their form in a dream and being given power simply by being near it. So, you may think you are personally acquainted with your patron, but the patron may not even be aware you are there at all, making meeting them very awkward, like a stalker actually meeting a person of interest. One thing many warlocks of any Great Old One share with each other is the theme of being a bit crazy, a screw loose, completely bonkers. Something you could easily play on, and in some cases, that is what the patron wants. A good example of this is my favorite Lovecraftian entity, Hastur the Unspeakable, the funky fella I mentioned earlier. Hastur, as mentioned earlier, being imprisoned on a star, has a theme of madness associated with his symbol, simply referred to as the yellow sign. His goal is to spread madness via his sign, as anyone who so much as looks at the sign is enthralled by him, and has an unreasonable urge to spread the sign around and shows others, spreading the madness. So madness is a theme of Great Old Ones, and the concept of the character's very mental collapse and deterioration might prove to be very well used as a theme. So go ahead and make a deal with the floating eye surrounded by tentacles asking you to sign on the squishy line and spit. It could be fun. What's a little madness in exchange for brain powers and a touch of magic? Next up, we have the Pact of the Undying. This is essentially striking a deal with some powerful undead, usually a lich or even a revenant. This can be done in a myriad of ways, such as hunting down said undead and either begging for your life or having them beg for their whatever their existence is. Either way, you've worked out a deal where you get spooky powers from something that isn't supposed to be alive. The theme of the Undying Pact is usually fairly predictable. If your patron is a lich, then they likely want to use your body or soul in some way, possibly to extend their own life, giving you X amount of years with this power, and by the end of it, they get you to put your soul into their phylactery, all supernatural Azazel style. However, if your patron is something else, like say a powerful ghost or my personal favorite, a revenant, then your pact may be to perform some long-lost service or duty in some kind of way that they couldn't finish in life, and cannot do in undeath, like redeeming their name to the kingdom or perhaps regaining the love of a long-past soul. Seemingly nigh impossible task, but something that they would be more than willing to hire out some poor bastard to go and do something like that, while they mope around being all sad and dead and stuff. Due to this sort of time reliance idea, a Warlock of the Undying would likely be fairly impatient or very narrow in its line of work, knowing exactly where it needs to be and what is needed in the long run. The details between then and now may be undiscovered, but the ends justify the means in this case. While the idea of a lich being your patron may seem typical, if your character is not going to be evil by any means, or if they have some degree of good in them, I actually recommend the previously mentioned idea, completing some leftover task of the undead patron or serving to redeem their name. Striking this kind of bargain can give this particular pact a sense of righteousness and good vibes rather than impending doom like all the other pacts seem to have. Last on the list of actual entities of this so-called pact list is the Pact of the Celestial. Celestials are some form of angel ranging from Pegasus to Devas to Solars and everything in between. Celestials are probably the easiest to understand on this list, as they are all pretty much of the same mindset, just varying degrees. All high-powered Celestials are capable of bestowing such power to a mere meatbag, and are often the upholders of justice and law at the whims of their god. However, between Celestials of the gods, that is where the similarities end. What divine laws they uphold and why they are there, doing whatever they're doing, are just as much as varied as the gods they are beholden to. So while an angel of Heronius would uphold the laws of chivalry and honor, much like a standard paladin, an angel of Ouijas would be more likely to uphold the laws of passage of death, seeking out and enforcing the law of their goddess on those would-be necromancers that defile the dead for their own selfish needs without proper rites. The Celestial you make a pact with could want you to undertake a particular holy mission, such as reclaiming certain lost holy relics, or even slaying a particular demon or devil, always named of course. However, this need not be the specific detail of any one task. You could have struck a deal with them and they ask you to go out to any town healing any child you come across, no matter the illness. In any case, this is pretty much the one pact that won't make your paladin friend look at you weird anytime you cast Eldritch Blast. And maybe even a little jealous since they got a smite for their god's favor and all you had to do was shake hands with an angel and meet one no less. The final patron is possibly one of the more peculiar ones, but a lot of roleplay possibilities with it. That would be the Pact of the Hex Blade. This pact is a lot less sign on the dotted line and a lot more of the One Ring from Lord of the Rings. Basically, you have in a sense, bonded with a weapon that has a degree of sentience and has enticed you into keeping it. Sometimes the weapon will have a will of its own, like the soul bound to it and some other entity trapped within. This entity will either exert a will of its own on you in some way, or feel a sense of similarity with you. The Warhammer 40k universe has several good examples of Hex Blade inspiration in the form of demon weapons used by the forces of chaos. In this universe, weapons can have a demon bound within it, usually a very powerful demon like a bloodthirster or keeper of secrets or something of similar strength. These weapons are not just magic +1 weapons like a +1 longsword, but rather the will of whatever is trapped inside actually tries to either get free or exert its will upon the wielder. Demon weapons in 40k are good examples of what Hexblade relationships can be, in the evil spectrum that is. The one thing that all Hexblade warlocks have in common is that the weapon is the source of their power, not some contract with the devil or by looking at Cthulhu's butt cheek. I also want to acknowledge that I am saying weapons specifically, not blade, because the Hexblade doesn't have to even be a sword. It can be a dagger, a staff, or even a bow. So you can be all sorts of unique with it and decide your weird demon or angel blade is actually a magic crossbow or a uniquely carved throwing axe. Possibilities are endless. Just make sure that there is something unique about your weapon. Like, it will, of course, have its own will, or has a shard of a dead god in it, or something. You know, nothing too kooky. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this has inspired you to have your own unique take on your Warlock, and perhaps either create a unique bargain with your given patron, or break the mold and be something entirely different in your pact. Hopefully you and your DM can take these tips and make a great role-playing experience for you both. What is your favorite Warlock pact? How did you roleplay it, if at all? Let me know in the comments below. Got an idea for a topic? Let me know in the comments as well, and I'll get to it as soon as I can. Be sure to like this video if you found it interesting, and subscribe as well to keep up with any future videos. Thanks again, and may all your rolls be a crit success.